The end of the year is quickly approaching, which means there is no better time than now to start planning for some end of the year purchases. And in recent days, there's been some headway into some legislation that I think Turo hosts could be very interested in. And so that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get started. We are currently in the second week of August, which means it's basically fall, which means Halloween is right around the corner, and then in the blink of an eye, it's going to be Thanksgiving, and then before we all know it, it's going to be Christmas. But seriously, I feel like every time August comes rolling around, the rest of the year just absolutely flies by, and before you know it, it's going to be December 31st. So because of that, I think that this time of year, August, September, and the next 4 to 6 weeks, it could be a really good time for you to sit down and consciously think about how you want the rest of the year to play out, and which purchases you want to make from both an investment standpoint as well as a tax preparation standpoint. Now, I am not an accountant and this video is not official financial advice, but there are loads of deductions that you can take advantage of that can be a huge benefit to you if you're a small business owner or a Turo fleet owner, whether you're somebody that's wanting to add an addition to your fleet or you're somebody that's wanting to upgrade equipment, get some stuff for your office, for your shop, whatever the case is. And these deductions can be a huge game changer, so they're absolutely something that you should be aware of, even if you don't necessarily want to take advantage of them. Now, the way that I want to lay out this video is I'm first going to talk about the deductions that you have at your disposal that are already in action and that you should already be aware of. Then I'm going to talk about the new piece of legislation that is set to pass this week, because this could be a huge benefit to you fleet owners that are wanting to add an EV. Then at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about how I plan on using these deductions for my benefit and how I've used them in the past. So first and foremost, you have Section 179, which is a portion of the tax code that allows for you to deduct portions, or in some cases, 100% of the purchase price of vehicles. The amount that you would actually qualify to deduct of a vehicle would depend on a handful of different factors, including the weight of the vehicle, the purchase price of the vehicle, as well as how often you use that vehicle for business. For example, if you had a car that weighed over 6,000 pounds and you used that car 100% for business, so for example, if you rented that car out on Turo, you could actually deduct 100% of that purchase price off of your taxes. But on the other hand, if you had a regular sedan like a Mercedes or a Lexus and you used it a portion of the time for business, then the deduction would be much less. For example, my Ford Transit camper van I bought in 2020 qualified for a 100% depreciation, so I was able to deduct the full purchase price from my taxes, helping me reduce my tax bill. And last year, I purchased a 2015 Maserati Ghibli, and with that purchase, I was able to deduct $18,200 from my 2021 taxes, greatly reducing my last year's tax bill. It is incredibly important that if you're somebody with a business, and yes, Turo is a business, that you become acquainted with all the different tax deductions that you have at your disposal for your business, because you could be leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table if you don't. And if you're somebody that doesn't understand the tax code, or you don't have an interest or the time to learn, then I think it's a worthwhile investment to hire somebody that knows what they're talking about, like an accountant. In fact, for me and my business, hiring an accountant that understood car sharing and understood how I made my money was one of the best investments I could have ever made, and it's paid itself back tenfold. As for Section 179, there is a lot of nuance to this, and it isn't simply black and white. You can't just say, okay, I bought this car for $30,000 and thus I'll get a $30,000 deduction. There is a lot more to it, which is why I highly encourage you to hire an accountant if you're somebody that isn't sure exactly how these deductions work. But for the sake of this video and for Section 179, I'm going to leave it at that because I know I wouldn't do this topic justice if I dug in any deeper. But then that brings us to the newest piece of legislation that is currently being voted on in Washington, and this could be a big one for anybody that's wanting to add an EV to your fleet. The Inflation Reduction Act is a bill that just passed in the US Senate, and it's now heading into the House, and it would allocate $347 billion to climate and energy spending. But one of the biggest things it would do would end per manufacturer limits on EV tax credit, and it would add an additional credit for used vehicles. You see, historically, you could potentially qualify for a $7,500 EV tax credit. This would be given to you whenever you purchase an electric vehicle, and it was a huge incentive for people to switch from gas-powered cars to electric cars. But the problem is this credit had a 200,000 manufacturer cap, meaning whenever a vehicle manufacturer hit 200,000 electric vehicles produced, the EV tax credit would end. But it wasn't just a simple on and off switch. For example, if you were the 199th buyer, you would get the 7,500 tax credit, but if you're the 201st buyer, then you wouldn't get anything at all. That's not exactly how it worked. Instead, the EV tax credit would be phased out over time as more cars were produced. So customers that bought their electric vehicle earlier on would get more of a tax credit than those that bought them later on. For example, you can see here a full list of all of the electric vehicle tax credits that are still available. And you can see that some makes and models have the full 7,500, others have significantly less. And some, like General Motors, Tesla, and Toyota, don't have any of the EV tax credit left. Which means that if you're somebody that's wanting to buy a Tesla Model S, for example, you wouldn't as of now get any tax credit for doing so. But this bill would change that. What this new bill would do is it would lift the manufacturing cap that's currently on the EV tax credit, meaning if you're somebody who's wanting to buy a new EV, you could potentially qualify for the full 7,500 as long as you purchased an EV made in America. But that isn't all. Traditionally, these types of tax credits have only been available for new vehicles, but with this bill, it would actually change that, and you could qualify for an up to $4,000 electric vehicle tax credit on any used EV that you purchased, which is huge. Now, this is big news for anybody that's looking to buy an electric vehicle in the near future. And if you're somebody who is currently, as we speak, shopping for an electric vehicle, I highly encourage you to put that shopping on hold, wait until this bill passes and until it goes into effect, because that could essentially give you a $7,500 discount off of the purchase of your car. Now, it is important to note that this bill, as of now, has not passed, and nothing is set in stone until it's signed into law. But I do think that with this on the horizon, it's a good idea to really stop and think how you can use this EV tax credit and Section 179 of the tax code to your benefit in order to financially plan for your business. And here's what I will most likely be doing. You will know that I bought a 2015 Maserati Ghibli last year, and though I loved this car and I'm super happy with how it did on Turo, I'm not doing that again because buying a car that incentivizes speeding is a recipe for disaster, which is why my Maserati ended up being slammed into a wall. So this year, I'm going to be buying a newer, nicer car for the fleet, but will most likely be going with something in the luxury space like a Mercedes or a Lexus. My best performing car in my Turo fleet is my 2009 Mercedes-Benz C300. So HP and I are currently looking at a newer model Mercedes or Lexus. Though we don't know exactly what car we'll be getting, we know it's going to be used, we know it's going to be in the $18,000 range, and we know it's going to be probably one of those two makes. But everything else is still up for debate. But next year might be the year that we finally pull the trigger in adding our first EV to the fleet, in part to take advantage of this EV tax credit. I don't know what car this will be, but I know it most certainly will not be a Tesla, as I think Teslas are way too oversaturated on the Turo marketplace, and I personally won't be adding one anytime soon, if ever. This car will almost certainly be used as well, so we wouldn't be able to take advantage of the full $7,500 tax credit, but we would be able to take advantage of the $4,000 tax credit. And honestly, there are a ton of electric vehicles that I absolutely love that are on the road today, so it's just a matter of figuring out which one we want to buy, doing our research, and pulling the trigger. But that will be sometime next year. This is my rough plan as of today, and it's what I'm talking with my accounting team about to ensure that we can take advantage of the most deductions as possible. Of course, nothing is set in stone and things could change, but this is definitely what we're thinking about. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, I am not an accountant, I am not a tax professional, and this is not official financial advice. But what I do know is that whenever I was first getting started with Turo side hustles and small business, I had no idea how important it was to make strategic purchases with my business and to use deductions to my advantage. And by not doing this, I almost certainly lost thousands of dollars in potential deductions that was just simply money being left on the table. And I wanted to make this video not to give you tax advice, but to make sure that you're thinking about these things before it's too late, and that you're beginning to consult a professional today while you can still make some meaningful changes. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I'll see you guys in the next video.